How could the arrival of the internet and globalization be having a negative impact on autochthonous local cultures? It's a fantastic question. It's definitely happening. You see the internet, which originally was largely driven by English language content and activity, and is still, that's obviously the lingua franca of the internet now, but China is growing very quickly. Chinese is becoming a rival to English for internet prevalence. And I think that there is something to worry about when local cultures feel that they're being trampled by an internet that's entirely global, has nothing to do with them. But the internet is also a medium that local cultures can use to keep their cultures alive, which has happened all over the world, has happened in every European country to some extent, where old languages that are regional or specific to groups have been kept alive because people cared about them. Same with culture. I think culture will endure to the extent we love that culture and want to continue to pass it on and share it. And the internet, in the end, I think cannot trample the human spirit. Is there hope for collaborative funding changing business models in the media and other industries? There is, I think. We have a lot happening in the US and I think in Europe as well, with nonprofit partnerships, sometimes with for-profit companies, crowdfunding. There is no proven best model yet. There's a lot of experimentation. Websites like Kickstarter have been teaching us a lot about what the crowd will fund, what it won't. There are questions about the tendencies of some of these crowdfunding efforts. They often tend to move towards certain projects getting the most attention in crowdfunding and other ones not. Is that a problem? Do we need multiple models for both collaborative funding and crowdfunding? And I think the answer is probably yes. I think that what we're going to see is a multiplicity of approaches rather than one single one that dominates the internet business world, basically. And I think that would be better than many, better than few. Are millennials' values and the emphasis they place on experience changing in a way how products are made and sold and changing the models? I think that's absolutely true. I do think experience is number one for many millennials. I don't want to group everybody in under one heading, but that seems to be the case. It's also true that every generation brings new values into the picture. Baby boomer values defined Western culture for a long time, even world culture, and that's sort of passing now. But behind the millennials, there's a new generation, Generation Z, they're calling it, which seems to have actually, at least at this point, its own distinct values. And they actually don't consider themselves to have so much in common with millennials. So I think it's sort of this wheel that's constantly turning of novelty and renewal, and then something fresh comes down the pike, basically. And I think that will continue to happen. So we should be careful about assuming what the millennials have brought in has any permanence to it at all. Are the arts and humanities endangered by the emphasis on STEM education? I think that has been the case for quite a while now, since the computer revolution took off, and that's where so many jobs were, and there will continue to be a lot of jobs there. It's why so many people are majoring in those fields, in STEM fields. But there is definitely an awakening happening now about the need for other kinds of creativity, other kinds of skills, exactly the kinds that humanities people and social science types of people bring to the table. Computer science, not just academic organizations, but corporations are increasingly looking for people with that other sensibility. Steve Jobs had it himself. He said all good progress happens at the place where science meets the humanities. And I think that will continue to be the case, and the humanities people will get a kind of revenge in the next decade or so. I think that one thing I would love to see, if I could add one thought, is that both sides of the equation that we've been talking about, the science and technology side and the humanities and the arts, become more aware of how much they have to bring the other one. I think there is a bit of a wall, sort of a self-built wall between the two that's been imposed by both sides, where they feel that those on the other side are kind of foreign to them. and that they don't have a lot to talk about or create together. And I think that's absolutely false. And they need to develop more bridges between them, speak a common language. They have a lot to learn from each other. And the fault of them being separate is not on one of them, it's actually on both of them. And so there needs to be an awakening to new possibilities for collaboration across that divide.